Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the Hyperion Hub, your meeting place for all things Disney. Now your hosts.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Hyperion Hub. I'm John Alois, and as always, joined by Sean Degenhart.
Hey there.
And John Redlingshafer.
Hello, hello.
We like to start our shows off each week with our Disney views, and John's going to have this week's.
Thanks, John. We recently lost a legend in the movie world. Many of you may think of him as the James Bond, Sean Connery. He passed away recently, and while there have been moments of controversy around maybe some statements and positions he's made, and while, again, many of you may know him as James Bond, you may be asking yourself, why is John bringing him up on a Disney-related podcast? Well, I'm going to throw out the idea to my cohorts here that maybe Sean has a Disney link. Can either of you, we'll start with John, maybe find a connection between Sean and Disney?
Of course. He was the love interest of Janet Monroe's character in Darby O'Gill and the Little People. He sings in this movie. You can find the scene on YouTube. The name of the song he sings is Pretty Irish Girl. And I think, John, you were going to sing this part, weren't you?
I don't have the shaken martini. I'm sorry. I'll do that later.
Oh, she is my dear, my darling one.
Yes, that's it. My pretty Irish girl. Yeah, that's it. He was phenomenal in it. It's a classic. Sean, what do you have?
And that was so early, I think, in his career. I mean, he wasn't Sean Connery then. So even when you watch it, if you're not aware that that's him, it might take you a while. You might say, I think he's a little familiar, but my Disney connection isn't a direct Disney connection, but with the recent acquisition of 20th Century and Fox and the Lucasfilm and all of those properties, of course, he's Indiana Jones' father in The Last Crusade. He's just perfect for that role. I mean, we talk about the quotes when he's, Junior, and, when he says, well, that's his name, we called the dog Indiana. And just some great lines, and they are so funny together. Sean and Harrison Ford, they are just, it's great chemistry.
Harrison had a quote, and I wrote it down here. You don't know pleasure until someone pays you to take Sean Connery for a ride in the sidecar of a Russian motorcycle bouncing along a bumpy, twisty mountain trail and getting to watch him squirm. We had so much fun, yes.
And he's so different from his other movies. I mean, he's so not James Bond. He's kind of bumbling and kind of the daffy professor type that not always quite sure what's going on. It's priceless.
I even have kind of a curveball here at the end. Buena Vista Pictures, which became the Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures entity, I believe, was in charge of a movie that seemed to be on after school quite a bit when I was growing up, The Rock, where Sean was a retired SAS agent tasked with working with Americans to rescue hostages, tourists that were trapped on Alcatraz. So in a way, it got us a late life version of what James Bond, I guess, would be like when he came out of retirement. Little background of that. I read an article not too long ago about him being brought in as the way to convince Disney to spend more money. Who could say no to Sean Connery when he shows up and says, just give us the money, right? And he would do it, and I'm sure a wonderful Scottish brogue.
And I'm just going to pull the curtain back here. My link to both James Bond and Indiana Jones. When I was a kid, I pretended to be both of these characters, but I was always their brother. I was John Bond, who moved to America when I was little, because I couldn't do the accent really well. And I was Illinois Jones. And there you have it.
Wow. Do you have audio recordings of any of these ventures?
Probably somewhere. Okay, this week, since it is the month of November in an election year, we thought we'd take a look back at the Hall of Presidents. Are you guys fans of this attraction like I am?
I will admit I've not done the Hall of Presidents. I love those shows. I love Tiki Room and Carousel of Progress, but we have never made it to the Hall of Presidents. And I'm seeing your jaws dropped, and I'm feeling shame.
As you should. My goodness. Have you even seen the Muppets, the patriotic Muppet show outside of the Hall of Presidents?
We have not been there when that's running.
I know. But yeah, Sean, I haven't judged anyone that much since John was trespassing on Pixar property, but go ahead.
I wouldn't call it trespassing. I was on the sidewalk.
He's still always defensive. Look at him go.
The legal documents did not say trespassing.
That's right.
As with most of the things you'll find in the Disney parks, the Hall of Presidents is one of the most unique theme park attractions ever created. It's an original at Walt Disney World from opening day at Magic Kingdom on October 1st, 1971, but its roots run much deeper. Back in the 1950s at Walt Disney's original park, Disneyland, Walt the Patriot was working on an idea to expand Main Street USA. He wanted to create a side street in the northeast corner called Liberty Street. There you would find a cobblestone roadway and buildings reminiscent of colonial America. You would explore attractions dedicated to the early part of our country and its relation to the concept of freedom of enterprise. There would be shops featuring glassmakers and woodworkers, 13 buildings actually. You would find Griffin's Wharf, Paul Revere's Silver Shop, and the Boston Observer print shop. At the end of the land would lie Liberty Square with an impressive Liberty tree out front. And behind that would stand Liberty Hall. There were several experiences planned for Liberty Hall, among which was the central attraction, the Hall of Presidents. I'm going to read from the D23 website, and it's talking about the Disneyland that never was. So the Hall of Presidents, a mighty cavalcade of American history, as seen through the eyes of our nation's leaders. Here, lighting, staging, music, and narration combine to create a living experience for us. The show begins with figures of Washington and the presidents immediately succeeding him, standing in silhouette. A compelling narrative recounts trying times and explores the formation of our heritage as excerpts from famous addresses of our nation's leaders echo through the theater. The music swells as the finale reveals a spectacular view of all 34 presidents on stage, and a rear curtain opens to reveal a CinemaScope-style motion picture screen featuring the nation's capital. This sounds pretty familiar, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Expansion was planned for 1957, but as we know, it never happened that way in Disneyland. Walt, of course, didn't want 34 wax figures with speakers attached. He wanted 34 moving, animated, human-looking machines to appear as if they've come to life. The budget wasn't there. Walt eventually turned his sights to larger expansion projects like the Matterhorn bobsleds and Submarine Voyage. But also, as we know, no good idea completely disappears at Disneyland, and it does get recycled eventually. Then came the 1964-65 New York World's Fair. This provided Walt with an opportunity for sponsorships to fund research and design of new technologies and possibilities. Originally, there were going to be 3 presidents featured in an attraction at the fair created by Disney: George Washington, Teddy Roosevelt, and one of Walt's personal heroes, and the one slated to get worked on first, Abraham Lincoln. In April 1962, Fair President Robert Moses visited the Disney studio to see how progress was coming on the attractions Walt's Imagineers were creating for the fair, and he came upon the Lincoln figure, who was the first audio animatronic person. Supposedly, Lincoln was programmed to raise his hand as if to shake Moses' hand, and he became infatuated. It's reported that he actually said, "I won't open the fair without that exhibit." Time and money were running out, so it was decided Lincoln would be the only president featured. Eventually, a sponsor was found. The state of Illinois would foot the bill for its favorite son, and Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln was created as the marquee attraction at the Illinois Pavilion. Walt was actually in Springfield, guys, an hour away from us, Springfield, Illinois, to make the announcement. Not only was it one of the most popular exhibits at the fair, but a second version was brought back to Disneyland and became equally popular for years. Less than a decade later, Walt has passed, but it's time to open the vacation kingdom of the world in Orlando, Florida. Many of the early concepts of Liberty Street have made their way into the planning, including Liberty Square as a unique land, and the Hall of Presidents came with it. Over the 15-year development of the hall, Imagineers referenced hundreds of paintings, thousands of photos, over 300 periodicals, and more than 600 books for research. They also visited Washington, D.C., Williamsburg, and other historical sites several times. And I did find it fascinating that when my family and I went to Williamsburg last year, one of my kids said, "This feels like Liberty Square."
They're indoctrinated. It's okay.
The presentation was split into two sections. The audience would see a film about American history first, and then the presidents revealed on the massive stage. Three-time Academy Award winner John DeCur oversaw art direction for the film portion. In his last project for the company, Disney legend Ub Iwerks helped develop a way to capture the paintings created for the film onto 70mm film. So much care went into the detail of the presidential figures themselves, height, weight, sculpt, and gestures, and they were all taken into account. Disney legend and sculptor Blaine Gibson is one of the big heroes of the attraction. He painstakingly sculpted President Lincoln's face a few years earlier, so he was tasked with doing the same for the rest of the figures. Hair was created by wig makers in Guatemala. Tailors detailed period fabrics for suits. Antique furniture was produced. George Washington's chair was an exact replica of the one he sat in during the 1787 Constitutional Convention. FDR was given a Phi Beta Kappa key to wear in his jacket. Clearly, they wanted all details covered. As I said, the attraction in 1971 opened with a film followed by the introduction of the then 36 presidents announced in chronological order up to Richard Nixon. Nixon, by the way, hold off any emails that are going to be sent to me. Nixon is the 37th president, but Grover Cleveland was president in non-successive terms, so he's counted twice. And I'm getting a head nod from John.
Hi, I like presidential trivia. It's all right.
Good. I thought you were giving me the stamp of approval. You are correct. The only president to speak was Abraham Lincoln, voiced by Royal Dano, and taken from excerpts from Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. Audiences were awed by the lifelike movements and gestures. The figures look at each other, their hands move around, their heads nod. It's really pretty impressive. Succeeding presidents were added as time went by, but for the most part, the show stayed the same. The concept focused on the Constitution and how it thrived and survived wars, political strife, and other aspects of American history. In 1993, the show was dramatically changed with the addition of the recorded voice of the sitting president. CEO Michael Eisner came up with the idea as part of a major revamp of the show. Bill Clinton approved the speech written by Imagineers. Lyricist Tim Rice also contributed. Clinton recorded his dialogue, and a new tradition began that carries on to today. But think about that. Disney and a theme park actually has the ability to schedule time with the leader of the free world and get a recorded voice for an attraction.
Well, I think what we have to appreciate, not just as fans of Disney, but as Americans, is that that company has so much weight. The word Disney was voiced at the most recent vice presidential debate. We have a dear friend of ours who always says, I see things, and when Disney will react, let's say shutting down the parks because of a pandemic, that's a message. A world leader doing something, it's a natural fit. Of course, the president, for maybe political, PR, and other reasons, wants their voice heard. But to me, it is. It's flattering, yet at the same time, it's not surprising given Disney's position, quite frankly, in the world.
Great point. In the 1990s, Disney was planning on building a park in Virginia called Disney's America, dedicated to American history, of course. One of the plans was to move the Hall of Presidents from the Magic Kingdom to Disney's America. The plans fell through when the general public voiced concerns about the Disney company creating a park like this, and a group called Protect Historic America was the most vocal. So it didn't happen.
I think that was that was Manassas, right? So at some point, just like building a grain facility or a chemical plant, all it takes is a zoning board hearing for things to go awry. And that group you mentioned there, John, got to thinking we don't want a mouse near Bull Run or something.
Were they going to move the attraction or just duplicate it?
From what I've read, they were going to move it. And I don't know what that meant for the rest of Liberty Square.
Yeah.
But that's what I read. Blaine Gibson continued to sculpt the presidents till he handed the daunting task off to Valerie Edwards for the Barack Obama figure. The show changed then, and now it focuses on the relationship between the president and the American people. Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, and the sitting president all speak. Inside the entryway in the lobby, there are artifacts and personal items behind glass. There are official presidential portraits, and you'll find an official Great Seal of the United States authorized by Congress. Just before you enter the theater, there's a bust of Lincoln in front of a black and white painting of Walt Disney, who loved American history. He wanted to learn about it, learn from it, and teach it in his parks. He literally dedicated Disneyland to the ideals, dreams, and hard facts that have created America, with the hope that it will be a source of joy and inspiration to all the world. The office of president was held in the highest regard to Walt and his wed Imagineers.
Well, now you've got me ready for our next trip. I think that needs to be one of our main stops. I think what happens is we usually get so caught up in heading over to Big Thunder Mountain and Splash Mountain that it's just, a quick walk through Liberty Square. So definitely going to have to do that. I did read that the Hall of Presidents is actually recognized as a federal presidential museum because of all the historical artifacts that they have sitting out in the lobby.
That's awesome. I didn't realize that.
Do you also realize that Walt Disney received an award from a president?
Did he get the Medal of Freedom?
He did on September 14th, 1964, from Lyndon Baines Johnson, who said, and I'm reading this from the D23 website as well, "What America is to be, America will be, because of our trust in and of the individual and of his capacity for excellence. Only those who doubt the individual can be dubious of America's survival and success in this century of contest. This belief is mine. It was this conviction that led President Kennedy to the establishment of the Medal of Freedom as our highest civilian honor for outstanding individuals, citizens who share an extra measure of individual excellence in the mainstream of our well-being and our advancements. On the talents of such citizens rests the future of our American civilization, for it is from the genius of the few that we enrich the greatness of the many. All Americans are proud, as I am proud, to salute today the great Americans here before me. Their lives and their works have made freedom stronger for all of us in our time." One by one, the recipients after that would step forward to receive their decoration, including Walt Disney, who was described as an artist and impresario in the course of entertaining an age he has created, an American folklore.
Outstanding. 1964. That's great. Now, as much as I love this attraction, I am going to tell you that my daughter did take a few naps in there.
Oh, it's climate controlled and it's lovely. Yes.
It's very dark. And it is, yes, a nice place to just sit there. Now, my wife and the four of us, one trip when my daughter was a baby, they sat in there through a presentation, and she was out on my wife's shoulder, and the cast member kind of just gave them a nod like, you're okay. And they stayed in there for the second show while Evan and I ran to the Haunted Mansion or something like that. So
that may be an appeal to get Anne to go next time, because when we were at Disneyland a few years ago, I said, you've got to come see, Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln. It was phenomenal. She found that was a great place to catch a few Z's, and she kept, let's go back to Great Moments with Mr. Lincoln.
When you look at that stage and you see all of those people on it as our presidents, and you have that direct tie to over 200 years ago when our government was founded, it is pretty overwhelming to see all those people. And yes, they're robots, but it's just so cool to see the current president standing near George Washington and to see all those different types of fashions. And it's just an amazing attraction. It's completely unique to anything else in the world, and I love it.
You've sold me.
You didn't need to sell me.
Resources for this episode include allears.net, d23.com, the Diz YouTube channel, laughingplace.com, nywf64.com, orlandofuntickets.com, and Zuma Press Incorporated. We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email or a voice-recorded message at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review us like Joshua Zilm did recently, and it'll help other people find us. Have a great week.
We're glad you could join us. We'd love to hear from you. You can email or send us a recorded audio message at podcast@thehyperionhub.com. Find us on social media on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. The Hyperion Hub is not affiliated with the Walt Disney Company or its subsidiaries. We'll meet you next time at the Hyperion Hub.